Hey, what's up everybody? It's Developer X, and I'm here to give you guys another quick tutorial on how to get started with React Router DOM and how to set up routes in your React applications. With no further ado, let's just jump in and get started. So I always like to start my projects from scratch so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing, and that way you can start from the very beginning. If not, you can skip forward a little bit and get started if you already have a pre-made application. So typically I always start with a brand new Create React app. So I'm going to do Create React app, and I'm going to make that into React Router example, and I'm going to create that. As this installs, on the right hand side you will see that I got the React Router guides of Redux integrations, basic examples, and URL parameters. We're going to go through some of these, not everything, but just so you can see some of the things that I've run into that could kind of help as we go through this. There's also three different kinds. There's web, native, and core. I'm assuming React, it's for the web, because we're building for the web. The native is for React Native. We're building for any other type of mobile device, and then core is just the core React Router DOM. So that kind of completed. So let's go into our React Router example. No. CD into React Router example. And here we're gonna have some dependencies. We actually only have one dependency here, and that dependency is React Router DOM. So I generally use Yarn because it's built by Facebook as well, and it kind of works hand in hand with Create React app. So I'm gonna use Yarn add React Router DOM and hit enter there. Once this is loaded, I will load up my code editor, and then I will use this current terminal to launch the application, and we can kind of get started from there. Okay. So here it is there. I'm going to open up my terminal here, and on this guy I will do yarn start just so we can have a version of our website up and running. Okay. And here it is. Wee. Just kidding. Okay, awesome. Let's look. Alright, cool. Fun. Yeah, awesome. This is fun time. Alright, now we're going to go back into the code and we're going to get set up. So here we have an index, which is our entry point, and then we also have an app.js, which is kind of where most of our application lives. And I want to do a few things, okay? I want, when I'm creating this... Oh, hold on. Excuse me. I'm going to edit that out. I am not feeling well. Okay, so there's a few things that I want to do when I'm working with React Router DOM. I understand that there needs to be a place where it's going to hold multiple components, and when we create an application, we only tend to have one. So I personally like to make the choice per route. So this is going to be something called dashboard, and inside that dashboard file, I'll have my index.jsx. And inside here, I'll have a new file called components. And I'll also have, if I'm using Redux, I'll have my dashboard .reducer.js here, and I'll also have my actions here. But we're not using that today. But just want to give you a quick tutorial on how I set up. The reason I like this is just because it's I can quickly access the reducer of the dashboard, the action of the dashboard, the components of the dashboard it's dependent on, and then when I actually import this dashboard, it's just as quick as grabbing the dashboard folder. You will have another directory structure called common, and that's where you use most of your reusable components that don't belong to a specific piece of your route. So like your navigation bars, your footer bars, those types of things, I'll usually place those inside the common folder. The reason why I actually have a namespace of actions.reducers or dashboard.actions or dashboard.reducer is because as your application gets bigger and bigger, you'll have multiple reducers and multiple actions for different files, and so it's just as quick for me to type in actions in my fuzzy search and see directly which actions I want to work on. But that's just a quick tip on directory structure. So let's get started. So I'm on the index.js file, and I'm going to do RCE, which is going to create a React application for me. I'm going to call this create React class. So I'm going to call this dashboard, and inside this dashboard I'm going to call this h1. Hi, I am the dashboard. Whoa, what's this? Oh, I forgot to push the escape buttons. Let's delete that out of here. We don't need that. It's going to break the code. Okay, I'm going to create one more just so you kind of see an example of how it works out. Where'd it go? So new folder here, and we're gonna call this, I don't know, orders. Okay, and inside that orders page, we're gonna have an index.jsx, and I like to automatically go in there and create all the files ahead of time, just so I can just get started. Orders.actions and orders.reducer.js. Okay, and then I'll create a folder called components. Okay, so just a quick example of what it looks like. You push Control P, you can bring up that, you can type in reducer. You'll see I have the orders reducer and the dashboard reducer. If I'm looking at working on actions, I can look at the orders actions or the dashboard actions. Now imagine having 10, 20, 30, 40 different routes. This kind of comes in handy. Okay, so let's go back into the orders component. It's going to do the same thing. Type in RCE, hit tab, type in orders. And then here I'm going to type in H1. Here, hi, I am the orders page. Okay, so we have this all in place. We've created some dummy content. We also have the home page, the app. Now we have to sit here and build our routing system. Okay, so we're going to be using React Router DOM, and if you look, the first thing I'm going to go into this basic example. The one thing that I see is this top line, like what am I importing and how am I using it? Okay, so a couple people do different things. They have a root file. They'll create this source directory, push the app in there. They'll create like an app folder and put the app in there and kind of make everything a little bit more clean. Personally, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that the index and app.js are on the same level, so I'll probably just keep it there for right now, but usually some people will clean that up and change it. Okay. As I am going through the application, we want to set up routing. So here's what it looks like with the basic example, and here's the dependencies that we need for this to work. Okay, so I am going to go to my index.js file, right, and I am going to start importing those from React Router DOM. So I'm going to do import, and it says browser router as router. Oh, add as router. It looks like a route. And link. So I don't specifically need link at this point, but we can bring that in later. And there's two types of links, and we'll go through that in a little bit from now. React Router DOM. Okay, so we brought that in. Now we need to wrap our entire route, our entire application around these things. So I'm going to grab this app directory, or this app component, and I'm going to wrap it with the router. And I'm going to open that router. I'm going to place that app inside of it. Okay, so this will work with only one, but it'll break with everything else. Plus, we haven't even defined the routes yet. So if you, before you run into any hurdles, if you don't have a div around it or one single child component, so one single child. So if you have multiple children, like for example, if you had this and this, it will not work because there's multiple children. The router can only accept one child, and that's why you can see in this example that you have a div between everything. There's only one div allowed. Okay, so make sure you remember that you can only have one child in there, and if you forget, the error message is pretty clear for you to understand. Okay, so the next thing it looks like it does, it looks like it sets up the route. So I'm gonna hit a route, and it looks like it accepts two parameters, path, and which is, I want to give this the home page, and a component, which is going to be app, right? That's our base component. So if I get rid of this, we should still load our home page. So our home page is loaded. But now I have a dashboard page and an orders page. So I can come in and bring in those pages right below the app. So import dashboard from dashboard, and I can import orders from orders, and now we can set up the paths for them. Okay, so we can type in route, path is equal to dashboard, or just do lowercase, let's keep it consistent, dashboard, and let's give this a component of equal of dashboard, and I want to make one more of these where we have something for, no, I don't need the router, I need the route. So we can actually add one for the orders table. Orders, and that component is equal to orders. Now I know there's going to be something that happens on this page right now when I go to different pages. But I want to show you these examples so you can kind of, when you run into it, you know how to solve these problems. So if I go into route and you see the route path is just the home page, I'm only going to see this page. If I go into dashboard, you'll see this page, and that's it. But why is this loading when we don't need it? And where is the rest of our application? Typically, you'll see this on the bottom of this page, but let's go break down the code and see what happens. Okay, so we have this header class. Inside that header class, we have this app link, and inside that app link, you have save to reload. But why is this not working? Huh. Crazy. Oh, it's because I spelt it wrong. I spelt it wrong. Okay, save that. Now you'll see there it is. Okay. So, like, what's happening here? Why do we see both the dashboard page and this this app page? Well, what's happening here is that the router's going in and it's grabbing all the matches that match with that direct with that path. So if you go to /dashboard, you'll see that / is a match and dashboard is a match. So it's going to render both of these components from here down. So it's going to keep going down. So if we had another one called dash, and we had, if we do route path is equal, I wonder if dash will work actually. And component, I've been spelling wrong today. Component dashboard. Oh, spelled it wrong again. Right, I wonder if this will work. Nope, just one time. So it has to be an exact match of this, but it matches this first line and the second one. I was assuming that if it matched dash, it would still show, but not the case here. Okay, so good thing we tried that out and tested it out. So I'm going to delete that key here, save this, and I'm going to show you guys how to fix this. So there's a couple ways of fixing it. You can use something called exact. It's the exact property, and you can see that will get rid of that component. But if I go back to the home page, it'll show only that component. You can see that I can use something called a switch statement or a switch case from React Router DOM. So how to use that is I'm going to type in switch, and I'm going to then wrap all my routes around it, and I'm going to right here, and I'm going to grab the alt, go all the way down, pass that in. And just so you know, your last one has to be on the bottom. I mean, like just the basic home page. The reason that is because it's going to go in from top down, and it's going to match from top down. So if we put this on the top, you'll see that if I go to dashboard page, it'll load this page without loading the dashboard. Okay. Great. And why is that? Well, that's because we have it's going down this switch statement. It's looking at this first path. It says, oh, this matches. I want to load this in and then not load anything else in. But if I actually go in and move this down, you'll see that it's going to load the right page. It's going to load the right page for us to get started with that. Okay, so now you have this crazy switch statement. So either way is going to be a good way to solve your problems. You can grab either one of those to get started, and that'll start going. I'm going to keep the switch statement, and then I'm going to continue building down into this application. So let's say we wanted to have something that we pass in as a param. So here I'm going to have something called color, right? And I'm going to have this color go in there. And grab that info here, and it's going to load that URL. So it's going to only load that URL if I pass that in. I wonder if there's a way to say if it's okay to pass that in, if it's not okay to pass that in. It's typically a question mark. So let's go look for that up. So directions, ascending or descending, orders. So I wonder if it's typically a question mark. So let's see if this actually works. Yeah, so you can put a question mark in front of it or behind it, and it says it's optional for it to actually put in there or not. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this information, pass in info, and you'll see that it still renders the same page. Okay, so I'm going to go back into that dashboard component. I want to show you guys some things that you can use. So when I render this component, React Router DOM imports a lot of information for the route into 3 different types of objects that gets passed into your component. So in the render method, just so we can see it, I'm going to console.warn this.props. And inside this.props, because we're using React Router, you should be able to see some of the things that gets passed into this, right? So you get an object. The object shows you history, location, and match, right? So you can use these types of things to figure out what you're doing and how to use React Router. So I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. On both sides, you'll see that we have a location, which gives you a hash, a path name, a search, a state. It gives you a match. Is it exact? It's true. If the color, if there's any parameters you're passing in, for us it's info, because we said this little key right here will be the param that we're looking for, and you can grab that param right outside that. So I'm just going to show you a quick example. I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to say this.props.params.color or .match.params.color, and you should see it say info. I don't know why I picked info for that word, but there it is. But we can change that to blue. We can change that to green. We can change to basically anything that we want, and you'll see this. You can see a bit of information where the history is. The params is kind of an idea there. The path that you're looking for, and the URL, if they match or not. And then you'll have a hash, a path name, and the history of the object. Okay, you can go back, go forwards. So you can use these actual props here to do certain things to go forwards. Let's say I wanted to move forward in my history. I wanted to go to a different link by pushing a button or something, and I wanted to use the history object. I can use something called go forward or go back or go. I can use push, I believe. I can replace that last piece that I went to and go to this different URL for like a redirect. So they're all here for us to utilize as we're going through this system. So kind of take a look into this history object and look at what things you can use to solve the problems that you're facing inside your application. There's also another quick thing that I wanted to show you guys was, let's say I'm going to go to components here. I'm going to go to common, and we ran into this yesterday with one of my students, and I'm going to create something called a navbar.jsx, right? And here I'm going to do RCE, I'm going to call it navbar, and call this h1 navbar. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you that you can place kind of your code inside this thing here, and reutilize all the code that you're using. So import navbar from from common/navbar, right? And I'm going to import that in, and right underneath this div, because I told you to only have one child, I'm gonna use this navbar. Okay. Now I spelled from wrong, so I'm gonna go back in here and I'm gonna save it, and I should see a navbar, right? But I'm gonna go into my dashboard and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to remove this props from here. Now the biggest difference here is that we're not using the route to get into the navbar. Well, maybe the navbar needs to know some information about where we're at, where we're staying, what we're trying to do. Maybe you want to show an action item or maybe an active item. So let's say you're on your home page and you want your home page menu to show. Those types of things, you can do that in your navbar, or you can wrap this using React Router called with router, and then you'll have access to the latest information for the router object that's coming back in. Okay, so let me just show you an example, and you'll get what I mean. Okay, so right now I'm gonna go into navbar, and I'm going to console log this.props or console.warn. I like to use warn because you'll see it in yellow, and you'll see that it doesn't exist. Okay, so if I look at this.props here, you're gonna see it's just an empty object. There's nothing there for it to work with. So how do I fix that, and how do I wanna bring in some more information here? So maybe here I want to do import with router, and we're going to call that from React Router DOM, and we have to wrap, just like we're using Redux and using the connect, we have to use with router here. Okay, and then it's a higher order component, and so then we save it and we look at it again, and then there we go. We get the path name, we get the match, we get the locations, but we don't get the match. So even if I pass in a parameter here, it doesn't show me the match. So you'll get the path name, but you won't get the match that you were looking for. And sometimes that can be a pain because you might be looking for a specific path or a specific location or a specific thing. And I'm not sure how to get those params into this for it, but you can get some basic information like location, the path name of the location, the search, the actual history object, and finding different information there to grab that information from. Make sense? So that's just a quick way of doing it. You'll also see that in Redux, if you have a stagnant, that'll tell you right here in Redux integrations. It'll show you that there's sometimes a blocked update, and if there's a blocked update, it won't update the code. Like so, you'll be going through the code, and all of a sudden you'll push a button, and you'll see that render doesn't change anything, so it stays the exact same. And for us to combat that, and we want to fix that so it can actually show something, it tells you to wrap your Redux connect objects through the with router. So, and make sure it's always the outside function. So it shouldn't be like this. It should be inside of the with router. So this doesn't work for you. You won't want to do that. What you'll want to do is you'll want to go inside of your with router. You're going to do connect in here, call in your map state the props, and then call in your nav bar, or the component you want to do. Pass in the map state the props, and your dispatch to props, or maps dispatch to props. 2 props, and there you go. This is kind of what it looks like. So we don't have Redux installed in our application right now, but this is what it would look like with the router to pass that information back into the Redux layer. And then you can pass in that as a prop that goes into that Redux component, okay? So that's a quick tutorial on getting set up. Let's do a quick review on how it works, and let's go back in and review what we did. So the first thing we did is we created a, oh, let me get this back out of the way, clean this up. Okay, we're good to go. Okay, so the first thing we did is we went into the Create React app, and we went to the entry point file. We then imported what we needed, which was the import browser router as router, a route, and a switch from React Router DOM. Before we even did this, we installed our dependencies by doing a yarn add React Router DOM. Okay, we then brought those dependencies in, and we wrapped our application around the router function, which is a browser router, but we're just subnaming it to router. Okay. One thing that we know is that the router only accepts one child, so we put a div around there and then put everything inside there, which also tells me a few other things. You can make this any way you want. Have a sidebar. You can see examples of sidebars here where you can have this navigate around while your sidebar still works. Then we imported our different routes. So we created a dashboard folder, an orders folder, and then we created our routes by giving it the path, colors, we gave it a path, we gave it a parameter, we give it a component. So the one thing that the route needs to have a path, and it needs to have a component. There's also another way of doing it. If you don't want to do component and you want to pass in props from this level into the dashboard, what you can do is you can grab this, call this render, makes an equal sign, and then grab props from here and pass that into this, and that will do the same thing. Okay, so just something like that can happen, where you can actually render it this way. It's going to do the exact same thing. If I save it, you'll see that I can still go to the home page and it'll still load out, or I can still go to this page and it'll still load out what I'm looking for. And I think in this point I can see that there's nothing changed, but you can see that I have the same information. Oh, no you can't. No, you can't. Never mind. That's from the nav bar, not this bar. All right, but you can also render it that way, passing a render to pass props in from that level into the other levels, into that rendered component that you want. I like actually using component unless I need to change it myself. There's actually a reason to use render, so I'll keep it to component until I need to use render. Okay, so we then added a route. We gave it the path of what we're looking for, what component to render. We gave it another component path, and we gave it another route component, gave it a path of orders and a component, and then a route path is equal to the home page, and it renders the actual app. Now, the one thing I didn't show you, and you know what, so we're going to continue going on with this tutorial. So, all right, one last thing I want to show you guys. So we're going to go back into our component here, and I want to import link from React Router DOM. Now, there's also another one called navlink, which allows you to add like active styles and those types of things to it. But what I'm looking for is just a quick way to get from point A to point B, right? So I'm going to grab a Lee, and I'm going to make this a link, and I'm going to say this is to the home page, and I'm going to call this home. I'm going to grab another one of these, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to make 3 of these. I'm going to call this one dashboard. I'm going to call this one dashboard, and I'm going to call the last one orders. Orders. And we're going to create that orders. I'm going to save this, and we should see a quick update in our navigation bar. And I'm just going to get rid of this H1 nav bar so we can kind of see it go away. Save that, and then I can kind of go away from anywhere I want to go and still have that in the dashboard and take me wherever I want to go. Okay, so using link is kind of what you can use to replace your A tags. It'll be the thing that actually lets you go from point A to point B, and as you can see, it's being updated every single time as we pass through and go to different pages, so we can see that the React router DOM is updating and passing that latest information into the router so we can update everything accordingly. So that's a quick little thing there. Okay, so getting back to reviewing this, we imported everything that we needed for we imported our, I'm gonna edit this. We installed our dependencies by using React Router DOM. We then placed our dependencies and set up our router by setting up the code here. We used a router, a switch, and a route. We then imported our components that we have separate pages. So a dashboard has its own page, orders has its own page, and the app has its own page. So we created a route for each one of those. We created a parameter of color so we can grab the parameters being passed through the URL by adding the the parameter of color into the dashboard. Okay. We then created a nav bar that we use for every single page that lets us get around from place to place, but we also wrapped it with something called with router. I'll show you that right now. So we got links, and we got with router. With router just injects the current match, the current React Router DOM object into this component, so we have access to things called match, location, and history. After that, we then put everything together on the index.js page, and we then made it live. I hope this helps. Hopefully this helps get started with React Router.